Hey guys, welcome to the Epoch Creative YouTube channel. My name is Forrest Proctor, and today I want to talk to you guys about how I created an AI film, basically covering the rivalry of the University of Alabama and the University of Tennessee. So before we talk about how I actually made it using AI, let's go ahead and watch it. Okay guys, now that you've seen the film, do me a favor, like and subscribe to the channel so I can keep making these videos for you. But without further ado, we're actually going to talk about how I made this. And as a bonus, I am using Carmichael's new VM40. I needed a way to test this, so this is a good way to do that. And I will have a video coming out very soon about this microphone. So if you like it, make sure you subscribe so you can see that. We're going to go through how we made this film and sort of my approach to the whole thing. This is my first AI film, and so I will be fine-tuning and refining these things going forward, but this worked really good for me the first time. And I will tell you guys that 50-second film that you just watched, or it's more of a hype video, it took about 5 hours. And we're going to talk about why it took 5 hours. It wouldn't have taken that long if the computing, would have been in a place where it could go faster. That was mostly computing and processing. Probably 2.5 or maybe 2 hours of that was actually creativity. But I'm sure that's going to get better over time. But let's go through my process. So I'm using a few softwares here to make this all happen. And the softwares are ChatGPT, the pro version of ChatGPT. I'm using Minimax by Helio AI. I'll put the link to the description to all these things, or I'll put the link to all these in the description rather. And then I'm also using Photoshop, and I'll explain why I'm using Photoshop as well. So if we just look at my thread here inside of ChatGPT, you can see there's a lot of images here that go along with the theme of this film. But the very first thing I did, and I found was very important, was I gave ChatGPT a prompt that would set me up for success going throughout the project. So I'll just read my initial prompt, and then you can, you can pause the video if you want and read the rest of its response and stuff like that. But just to give you some context, I said, okay, in this GPT thread, I'm going to be asking you to generate images in a 16:9 aspect ratio. So that assured that it was never going to spit out some square or some weird aspect ratio. First, let's figure out the style. I'll be making a series of images depicting a college football rivalry, specifically Alabama versus Tennessee. And then actually ChatGPT gave me some suggestions in terms of making it vintage, realistic, cinematic style, like an old poster. And I personally like that look, so I said, yeah, let's go with that. And so it told me, okay, I will stick to this style throughout all your prompts. Now, I did find over time it would start to drift, and I'd have to remind it to go back to the very beginning of our thread and remind itself of the style. And once I did that, it got back on track. So something you might want to think about as you're making these images. So in my head, this film was kind of like game day, right? But it was mascot versus mascot. So you'd get the elephant waking up, ripping the covers off and getting out of the bed, or the dog, like you saw, is like eating cereal, getting ready for game day. Those were kind of the images I was going for. So the first thing I went for was the elephant mascot, in the mirror getting ready. And you think about when people put the charcoal under the eyes, it's kind of like a classic football thing. I don't even think football players do that anymore. They really should, because it's just cool and classic. But the first two images that it did, they were okay. They weren't. This one's actually pretty good. I probably should have used that one. This one's a little weird because like the makeup thing is in his mouth, so we definitely couldn't use that. And then this one is ultimately the one I landed on just because of all the context around it. You have like the jersey hanging, the helmet, you have a little Alabama cup here, and then a logo in the back. Now, guys, these are copyrighted images, so I wouldn't do this for profit. This is just a project that I did for fun to test out my AI filmmaking skills. And of course, we're just generating a frame here. We're not really generating video yet. So this is the frame I ended up going with. And what's cool about ChatGPT is they have this little selection tool here where you can, and I did this a lot throughout the film, guys. You can click that and then you could come over here and say brush this logo and tell it to remove the logo and replace it with more wall surface. And I had to do that a lot because every image, as you can see, somewhere in multiple places a lot of times would slap that Alabama logo in there. And although I'm not against having it in the image, but like that doesn't even look like it's just slapped on there. So you'd almost have to remove it every single time whenever you're generating this kind of stuff. And we'll get to the Tennessee portion of things as well. You know, I had to do that a lot for that. But we gave it that prompt, and this is an image. It didn't take very many times. And there is a limit to how much you can do, like an hour. So just keep that in mind. But you know, overall, I really like this image, so I went ahead and downloaded it. And once I downloaded it, Helio actually won't take it unless it's a JPEG. So that's when you're going to have to go into Photoshop to convert it into a JPEG. You can use other softwares. That's just what I use. But the reason I also like to use Photoshop is because that is a good opportunity to use the lasso tool and use generative fill, if you're familiar with that, to do any other touches you want. So I might bring that image in, and I might, and I'm just going to pull it up here, but I might bring it into Photoshop, and I might want to take off this A of this cup, or I might want to just go ahead and remove the SEC patch logo because it doesn't look great. But you know, you can do little things like that at the same time as sending it through for its conversion to JPEG. So it's like, you know, you're doing two things at once. That's why I kind of like Photoshop for that part of it. But of course, once that's done, you're going to bring it in here to Helio AI. And you know, what I do here is I upload the image. So you can see I've got all my images here. I upload the image and then I give it a description of mainly what's in the scene and the camera movement. So I might say, in fact, let's just go look at the prompt that I did for that. It's only showing 28 of my images. But I might say something along the lines of, you know, elephant mascot getting face paint in the mirror. Slow zoom in shot is what I think I did for that. But it ended up being a very fast zoom in shot, which I was actually okay with, because if you look at this shot, let me just mute the music. If you look at this shot, like it turns out really good. Now the face completely changes. Like you look there, he's got kind of a blank, morbid looking look. And then when it gets close, you know, he's looking a little more intense. And you can see like the bulbs right there. If we go frame by frame, you can see the bulbs are kind of morphing, but it happens so fast. And I've shown a lot of people this film, and it's, you know, it's out on all the platforms, and it's been a pretty good response to it. But nobody's ever said like, oh, there's some weird morphing going on, because the camera movement is so fast. And then I just love the way it does that. And of course we transition from one mascot's eyeball to the other mascot's eyeball there. But yeah, so you put that into Helio AI, and a lot of times you will get some really funky stuff, and you just regenerate as needed. I found that, you know, you can get on this free plan. You get 3 days of unlimited generations. It does add, let's just look at one of these. It does add this little watermark here. But of course, you can put some black bars there to get rid of that. You can upgrade to their premium, which I never did. I never have. You can upgrade to their premium to take those away. But once you get it generated and get something that you like we can just take this shot, for example. You know, there is some weird stuff going on here, but because he's playing drums so fast and I use these shots, you know, only 3 seconds at a time, maybe even less, it's not that big a deal. You know, the story is more of what you're looking at rather than the minute details of the shot. But if we go into Premiere here, you can see the thing's only 50 seconds long, and I only use 2 to 3 seconds, sometimes even 1 second for every shot. But I want to talk about getting some fidelity into the image, because Helio will only export or let you download less than HD, like let's just say 720p, I believe it is. So it's not a super detailed image. So that's why it's very important in ChatGPT to get the most detail you can, because what I did is I brought it into Premiere Pro here. And whenever I'm going to kind of make it a little bigger for you guys. Whenever I put these into Premiere Pro, I edited everything on a 4K timeline. And then this is actually a really good example. I edit on a 4K timeline. I upscale the images to 4K, which again, they're only 720, so they're gonna lose a lot of detail. But then what I do is I come into Lumetri scopes here. And if you go down to the creative panel, there is a sharpening tool. And just to show you guys the difference, I did 35, but if I went down to 0, actually, let's just go back to 35. I'll turn this on and off. And I'm not sure if you're gonna be able to see it on your screen, but even just on my little screen here, I can definitely see it. You can see those hairs, the detail in the hairs. It just looks like, it's almost like an illusion of more detail because it's adding these little bitty tiny dots all over. If you've ever looked into sharpening images, what it's actually doing is breaking up the image and putting these almost like little tiny dots that kind of separate the image rather than blurring it together. So up-resing to 4K. And then adding about 35% sharpening, or the 30 on the meter here, it's 35. I don't know if that's a percentage or what. I think really helps it. And again, it's kind of validation to me that resolution's not that big a deal, because I posted this on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, and the response has been overwhelmingly great. They're like, "Wow, that's so detailed. It's so rich. Like, how did you get it in 4K?" That's been a question that's popped up. And technically it's not 4K. It's a 720 image up-res to 4K, and then it is sharpened to kind of catch it up to the resolution. And then when I export it, I do export it in 4K. And there's also you could sharpen on the back end, like as you're pushing it out the final export, but I didn't do that. But yeah, that's kind of how I come to those images, guys. So you got ChatGPT to create the initial image. You've got Photoshop to do a conversion / any touch-ups you want to do to that image. And then you're going to bring it into Helio or Minimax or whatever the heck the software is called. Of course, you get a free 3-day trial. You're going to bring it into here to do any animations you want to do. And just to give you some examples of weird animations, like I end up using, I think 0.8 seconds of this. But as you can see, I mean, that's an unusable video because it's just so wonky. Like you got this guy going to tackle this other guy, and they end up in this weird freeze frame, like their legs were broken type thing. But in the actual film, if we come over here and look, but I gotta find it, it's so fast, and I use just a split second of it, that it actually works. Like it looks like it's supposed to be there. And you guys can go find it. I can't remember where exactly it is in this thing. That's how fast it is. Like it just happens. There we go, right there. So you got the elephants, boom. And it's just like a hit. And you can't even tell that weird stuff's about to happen. It's just, and it adds a little bit of excitement to it. Of course, I use some really fast-paced music and all that good stuff so I can make those quick cuts. But let's go look at another example of maybe something I did. So here's a zoom-in shot that I didn't really like. Okay, and then I redid it, and we've got this instead. It's like a slow zoom in. Yeah, that's a lot better depending on what you're looking for. Another example would be, let's find it, would be this guitar shot, okay? The first time I did the Alabama mascot playing the guitar, he's really morphing all over the place. And I put doing an Angus Young style leg kicks, which if you know who Angus Young is, the guitar player for AC/DC, he does like this like scissor kick thing where he skips across the ground. I just thought that'd be kind of a cool thing to see this thing do. But this software was not really feeling that. And so I ended up just stripping the prompt down a little bit. And this works. Like there's some wonkiness going on in his feet, but because I do that crop, you don't see a lot of that, and your eye is drawn to his face and the guitar. And this actually worked pretty well, and I thought it turned out really good. Another thing that I never even used, I wanted Peyton Manning rather, who used to be the quarterback for Tennessee. I thought it'd be cool to have him riding Smokey. But as you can see, Smokey's like backtracking here, and he turns into this long, weird creature. And I think I tried this prompt several times. And and it just never really worked out. Here's another one where they're sword fighting. You know, the first one didn't turn out bad. I could use it from like right here where the push-in is. And I like how the refs back there like refereeing the sword fight. But I did it a second time, and although it came out better, it didn't have that slow push-in. So I actually ended up going with the first shot, which would technically be not as good, I think. Here's another thing where like you're gonna have to cut around some weird stuff. Like as you can see, this guy right behind the main character is crying, right? This guy behind him just starts morphing into jello. So what I did was I literally just cut it right at the start and right when that guy starts turning into jello, and then the final shot, I believe, comes out pretty good. Sorry, I was about to open up Discord. It looked like so right here you can see I just used just enough, man. Like you can actually see his hand start to morph, but again, your eye is drawn, and that's just more testament to like true storytelling. Is you don't have to be so perfect, and I think this AI might actually be making people realize that, and maybe making us better filmmakers when we're taking our cameras out and making films. That if we'll focus on the story, I think that's enough. Of course, we want the images to look good, and I think this AI, give it a year, it will be at a whole another level. But that's just some more examples of different things you'll have to do. Here's one that these elephants are supposed to be crashing the field and kind of destroying the stadium. Of course, they all fall into this weird, and I wanted like a tidal wave because they're called the Crimson Tide. It turned out okay, but again, I used just a few seconds of it, enough to just give you that imagery in your own mind, and then it works out. And of course, last week they got beat by Vanderbilt, which was a big deal. And so I have like the Vandy mascot sitting in his press box counting his winnings almost. And that was more of there's a couple little Easter eggs. Also, one of the traditions of the teams is the winner of this game, the players will smoke a cigar in the locker room, which is where you get this image. Let me find it real quick. You get this image of the Tennessee dog smoking the cigar. Of course, I created this film 2 days before. And just to kind of troll Alabama fans, because I'm from Mississippi, I have a lot of people in my family who love Alabama. And just to kind of troll them, like I put little Easter egg predictors that I thought Tennessee would win the game. And of course, they did win the game. So that was kind of funny and cool to see. But yeah, let me see if there's anything else we want to talk about in here. Of course, these images, you're probably wondering how long did they take to actually process in Helio AI or Minimax, whatever it's called. It just depends. Like in the peak of the night, I was working on this later at like midnight to 1 o'clock. They were taking about 5 minutes, which was pretty fast. And my guess is people in the West or in North America were sleeping, and I was not. Now, as the hours went on, it got slower and slower. And so I actually had, and you're probably not supposed to do this, I had two different browsers open with two different email accounts processing the images separately. So that's how I was able to do them a little bit faster. Otherwise, this thing probably would have taken me 20 hours of process, or 20 hours of real time work. But it ultimately took about 5 hours to make this whole 40-second thing. But yeah, they take some time to generate, and that's why you kind of want to get a workflow going where you're working in ChatGPT on your initial images. Then you're working on some touch-ups inside of Photoshop. And while you're doing that, you've got images that are baking inside of Minimax. That's how I made the film. And then, of course, I pulled music from my favorite stock music site, Epidemic Sound. I'll put the link in the description. Used Premiere Pro to cut that up into something a lot shorter than what it was. It was like a 4-minute song. I did add some like little transitions between a few of the scenes just to give it a little more texture going through. It's kind of like some vintage, I don't know, film scratches looking things. I only added like 10 of those in the whole thing. And then let's see, of course we have our black bars if you want to see before and after, right? But that's it, guys. And I plan on making a lot more of these films going forward just because I've always been attracted to just creativity in terms of the least path of resistance. I think that's why I love to just pick my guitar up and play by the fire, because you don't have to plug it up. And I have tons of electric guitars and amps, and I love that too. But whenever I can make something this high quality by myself with just my thoughts, that's really exciting to me. And this was just more of a test and something to do for fun. But I think going forward, I'll be able to make films that have been in my head, or stories I have rather, from my life and my family's life, that I think are worth telling, but maybe aren't. It's not feasible to pick up a camera and go out and shoot the whole film. Maybe they're just more like short films or just little stories I want to preserve and add imagery to them. That's kind of where I want to go with this AI. And there's a lot of cool stuff going on in the AI video world. So definitely subscribe to the channel, and I will try to keep you guys up to date on that and kind of how I'm using it. But other than that, that's the video. I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.